Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be back with you once again. Right now, we have a young Indian with us, part of the Voice of the Young series. At the moment, we have with us Shanu Kumar. Let's listen to him. Over to you, Shanu.
Thank you for having me here, sir. I think it has been quite a while. I think I've been listening to your work, your video chat with other students, and their thoughts on your platform. I think it has been almost 2 years since I've been following some of these talks and trying to understand how peers across the country uh, feel about issues, how they try to correlate their personal experiences with everything that is around, let's say, policy or other stuff that is shaping us in different ways, different factors acting upon us in manifold ways. So just to give a brief background about myself, I was born and brought up in the city of Jamshedpur, Tata Nagar. And I think right now it's also very contextual to maybe just bring that out in the sense that the chairman emeritus of the Tata Group, Mr. Ratan Tata, he recently passed away. But the point that I was trying to drive home is that I literally grew up in a surrounding that was always very cosmopolitan, that was always very driven by by the zeal of community service, by the zeal of serving the society, and a kind of corporate arrangement that was based on not ownership of assets, but rather, let's say, trusteeship of assets. A very, very Gandhian way of, let's say, the corporate arrangement or corporate functioning. So, in that sense, I wanted to bring this out in the sense that it has shaped my entire thought process and whatever I have been, whatever I grew up to be, the choices that I made, all of that. Because from a very early age, what I saw was that there was this one company that has shaped the economy of an entire city that employs almost one third of the city, and every other, and even the rest of the two-third population is directly or indirectly dependent on a lot of MSMEs or ancillary industries that are vendors or suppliers to the Tata industry in particular. So in that sense, the kind of community camaraderie that was there uh, with people across the, let's say, across different religions, people from different parts of the country, be it people who spoke different languages. So a lot of that acceptance, especially given the kind of landscape, let's say in the recent years, how it has shaped the country. I think it's very important to just maybe bring that out, how acceptance and tolerance was so always very natural to the way I grew up, and I never really saw any kind of divisiveness in that way. So that was one part. But the other part is how the not just the economy but also the social capital that the company developed, in the sense that they literally funded high quality education for the kids of the employees and the non-employees, people who resided in the city, build a township, provided them houses, 24/7 electricity, water supply, all of this since 1960s, 1970s, at a point in time when a lot of these facilities were inaccessible to the most of the country. That is how we grew up, and we saw how the group has, let's say, helped our forefathers, our ancestors, uh, who just grew up in the city, and we kind of inherited that legacy. So that was one part. If I talk about my school life, so I studied at a school uh, where even the board of management and trustees were all from the Tata Group. So in that sense, the way the entire, let's say, curriculum was shaped, or the way teaching was facilitated to us, all of that in a non-profiteering way, that really helped us, I think, to become whatever people from my city and my school have achieved. And I'm not really talking about in materialistic terms as to, so and so person has a page dedicated to him in his name, or has a certain package or a certain CTC, or went to this country or that country. But I think just as genuine, ingenious human beings who can think originally and maybe who can dedicate themselves to certain issues and present themselves, work towards the causes of a lot of, let's say, problems that face the society. So while I was growing up, I think, again, I was always that one geeky student, a nerdy geek kind of student who would just maybe focus on his books and just maybe restrict himself to that. So I wasn't the one who would maybe participate in a lot of activities. That was in the earliest years of my school, and I would be like very nervous. But there was this one teacher that I had met back in school who literally pushed me uh, to debate, and debate was very antithetical to the way I had been raised. So that was one thing that had changed my thought process in a lot of ways. I think I might have been just in grade 7 when I started reading The Economist and the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, and I think I'd been following a lot of these publications from very early on in my life, and that kind of interest in a lot of stuff as regards geopolitics, as regards a lot of corporate arrangements globally, or let's say how one country is trying to influence other country through some kind of policy arrangement, so through some kind of geopolitical tactic. And that was also a point in time where I literally, I think, what is called as somebody's voice. I discovered that voice in the sense that I literally felt that I am very interested in what is known as the arts, the aesthetics in the sense of, let's say, architecture, or aesthetics in the sense, let's say, poetry. So how 18th century poetry was written, how Shakespearean poetry was written, and before that, all the Milton's work, and then Shakespearean work and Chaucer, and how it developed all through the Edwardian period, and in between you had the Spencerian period. And then I think I what really helped me, especially in a city like mine, where we were cut off from a lot of, let's say, distraction wouldn't be the right word, but let's say in our part of the world that might be a distraction. So because we grew up that way, I think we had access to a lot of time and space that we could dedicate to reading,
Okay.
and maybe involving a different kind of a thought process where we are able to maybe think ingeniously. And I think even if someone were to ask me what is the most important thing that I would like to have in my life, and I would say the ability to think ingeniously, because I think there are a lot of people, there are a lot of thought processes, but some way or the other, a lot of it is also maybe just, let's say, copied, produced without any significant value attached to it. I remember watching one of your talks where you, I think it was a LinkedIn post where you had mentioned that people often confuse research with what
Yes.
is known as data
Fact.
aggregation. People collect data fact finding. So
Yes.
they find, and then they publish that in the form of research, but that's not research. Research is when you are able to fact find, and then you are able to assess that this is the gap, and then you are able to come up with the necessary
Yeah.
suggestion that can bridge that. So, in that sense, the most valuable thing that I ever treasure is the ability to think ingeniously. And every day, I do not work towards anything else. I wouldn't say that this is what I want to become, or this is how much I want to earn in the next few years. But I would say I would want to continue to think ingeniously and originally, and maybe that is what keeps me that would keep me going. So this just reminds me of Rene Descartes' quote that he said that I think, therefore I am. So
Right.
it is thought process that I think keeps us on and moving. But just to return to my school life, I think because again there was this point in time where I was in a very balanced life between academics and co-curriculars. I had become a state level debater. I had won a lot of national competitions as well. Uh, so what really happened is that when I was in grade 9, so I think somehow when we reach towards the years of our board exams, something shifts drastically in the sense that learning is no more a joy, because what really becomes comes out of it, I think it is true. I've again, I will come to my college a little later, but what I've seen for schools across the country, what really what learning becomes, let's say from grade 9 and 10, and as your board years inch near, is a is a tussle as to who would score how much and how many admissions can a particular school bring in that year. So in that sense, I think that was a point in time, grade 9, when I think learning had become very joyless, because the focus of the school fraternity, and I wouldn't blame them, because I think our Indian education system is, I think, designed that way, that rewards rote learning, that rewards marks. So that was a point in time that I had lost all joy in learning, because what would happen is a mechanism that was made designed to teach you how to score in a particular way rather than how to question. And especially because I was talking about education, so the departure that I've seen from what is practiced in the West versus what is practiced here is that we always begin with certain assumptions instead of, let's say, establishing the premise wherein the students ask those questions as to why this is happening. But we always assume something and then we proceed.
Yeah.
I think what I did a lot of time during the COVID time was that I would try to read the original source as to, let's say, if calculus is a work that Newton did, or let's say Leibniz did it parallelly in some other part. So what was it that motivated that thought process? Because right now what we learn is a set of ready-made formulas, and that is fed to us, but nobody ever teaches us as to how to think in a particular way. Why was calculus needed? How, what is the history of mathematics? I think if there is the any better way to teach mathematics is to start teaching people how the history of math has been, how that thought process emerged, how that has been worked over through several centuries, and then maybe we can go on with established practice theories, with established practices. So I think that is
Shanu, I have to interrupt you. You haven't read my latest or one of my recent posts on LinkedIn about my learning calculus.
okay.
So I'll say it here in brief. You know, in our high school days, they did this way back in the 60s, they did teach differential calculus. I was good at mathematics. I was good at getting marks. This was not an issue. But that was just it, get marks. Calculus made no sense whatsoever. Okay, I was good at mathematics, so I'm not saying it was a problem. And, you know, I never took any, though time it was very, still important, but I was too lazy. I never took any mathematics in BA or MA. Okay. Then after my MA, I read Apostol's Integral, a calculus book on my own. It's a very tough book, but it starts with integral calculus. And then when you read that chapter 1, you say, okay, now I know what calculus is about. Differential calculus is, don't mind my pun, just a derivative.
Right, exactly.
It has no meaning. The meaning is in integral calculus. And then you learn Zeno's paradox. And when you read Zeno's paradox, if you haven't read it, Google it and read it, Zeno's paradox. And then you realize that Zeno is a Greek guy. He had posed a problem to mathematicians which nobody could solve till Leibniz and Isaac Newton invented integral calculus. So they actually answered Zeno's paradox. And you can tell that paradox in a very child story manner. You don't have to put it mathematically. And that's what, I mean, I said, okay, fine. Now I know what calculus is about. I still don't know what trigonometry is about. I mean, if you still ask me to prove sine squared theta plus cos squared theta equal to 1, probably I can do it. But why? So you're right. The teaching of mathematics was a problem, still is a problem. And there isn't anything like the joy of mathematics at all. And the beauty of mathematics is totally lost. And as a result, I wrote several years back that nobody should be taught mathematics beyond single equation in X and compound interest. After that, it should be strictly optional, because unless you understand math's soul, there's no point in any of it. There's just no point. But even quadratic equations and all, I mean, they mean. So anyway, I agree with you. I have very strong views. I did finally write that, look, it was only when I read Apostol and started with integral calculus, because I said, gosh, I've gone through BA, MA in economics. I don't know any mathematics. What the heck is this? So it was a very tough book and very classical book, but it really got to, since it was a classical book, it was not a book on formulas. It was a book on this is what calculus is. And obviously, the history was to develop integral calculus. And that's the original issue is in integral calculus, was answered by integral calculus. Anyway, let me not talk too much because it's a point I'm interested in. But my bottom line recommendation is that after grade 8, we should finish compound interest and equation solving single X. After that, we should say you are done unless you really want to learn mathematics and you are really going to enjoy it. If you are not, forget it. It's of no use to you. And please don't learn how to use calculators, because nobody uses calculators. Because if you don't have the feel for it, if you make a mistake in the calculator, you don't know you made a mistake. Right? If you multiply 23 by 4 and instead of 4, you press 14 and you get the wrong answer. And if you have no feel for it, then that calculator is subject to human error.
Right.
You can't say, oh, this answer is wrong. But if you can't say that, then you say, oh, this was the calculator saying the answer. Anyway, sorry, let's go ahead.
No, the point that I was trying to drive home was based on my observation, especially so far as the academia body in India is concerned, or the research as a discipline is concerned, is that the fundamental difference between the research output in the West and research output in our country is this. I think this very foundation in school, where we are always told to assume a premise
Yeah.
and not really inquire out of curiosity. I think that takes a lot of time. It might take 2, 3 years, 4 years when one is in school. But I think it does a lot of help. It adds a lot of value because they're able to come up with something that is out of bounds. That is something very extraordinary. So this is why I mentioned this. But just to go back to my school days, I think this was also a point in time where a lot of students in grade 9 itself had started joining JE coaching, and they wanted to get into IITs and stuff. But and being again, because I was a top student, there was intense pressure on me as well to maybe just start early, because you see, and when you are in grade 9, you're very gullible to all these impressions.
Yes.
Right now, try to brush it off. But a grade 9 student who has not seen life in its totality and who has not seen a lot of facets of it, some very integral facets of it, is very gullible to a lot of these impressions. But it so happened to me that I was always very rebellious. So there was this one teacher in school who had once said that, and he was from the science faculty, that commerce students can't do anything. And that was the time I would say realize that no, now I will take commerce. And so honestly, anybody asks me ki, why did you take commerce, I have no other reason, because I was always a top student, and even in my grade 10 board exams I was a topper. But the only reason that I switched to commerce was not because, let's say, I wanted to learn about business. It was out of pure rebellion that somebody said that a certain section of students can't achieve anything. So I said no, then I will definitely take this up.
Good.
And that's how it happened. So I think that rebellion always, I think it's still in me, but I will explain the context a little later as we move ahead. So that is how high school came by. And I think I was actually intrigued by especially economics and maths. I think they were my favorite subjects because I was always a student who's very interested in history. And the first thing that I would do when I would open my economics book or maths book and any chapter that I would learn, I would first read the history as to how did this concept come by, or if this was an economic thought in a certain era, how did that evolve? How did quantification of economics begin? uh, let's say from Adam Smith's point time to later on, by the time we had Keynesian economics. So I think I did a lot of extra work back home, and a lot of students maybe who would study, let's say, just for the sake of marks. It was not required because that would never be asked in your exams at all. But I think there was this one thing, and I've been mentioning it again and again, that has been driving all my existence, and that is the ability to think ingeniously.
Okay.
So that is very fundamental to me. I think college came by me at a time when COVID lockdown had just begun. So my first year in college was entirely online, and since my second year and third year, that was in the offline mode. So I think I somehow was lucky enough to have the best of both the worlds, and I could see the flip sides and advantages of each of the two sides. But the best thing about college that I treasure the most is the massive liberty that I got in the sense of exploring things. And our college in particular, again, no offense, because I just heard the recent system has changed, but at least till we were there was no bar on attendance per se. So somebody could have, let's say, 0% attendance, but he might still do very well because he's maybe spending time on internships, and he's maybe writing research papers, or he's maybe studying something that is adding value to him, or he's preparing for placements and stuff. So, because we did not have that kind of compulsion to attend classes in particular, and because the entire circuit, I went to SRCC, the Shri College of Commerce, and because the entire college ecosystem is by and large driven by students, I think that is something that I have really treasured and valued all this while, that you get to learn a lot from your peers. So especially, I think so when you were mentioning some time ago that you want to give the youth a voice to speak, and I think it is these interactions with people from my age, my peer group, that has added the most value to whoever I am, or to what in whatever fashion I think. So I think that is very, very important to have a very strong peer group, people who kind of, even if somebody tries to negate our perspective, but I think even in that sense, they add value to the entire discussion that is in question. So that was it. And in college, I had the opportunity to do an internship at University of Pennsylvania. It was a kind of a research internship, and thankfully, I was in a team where I had got the Department of Social Policy, where I studied these blocks of education and health facilities across the West, how it is in Scandinavia versus how it is in Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. And that was a point in time that I really got interested in academic learning, and then I would and our college had access to a lot of these research softwares, and I had a very good professor who helped me assess a lot of these papers, who would drive me. So because the college had access to a lot of the databases, what I would do every day is, when I would go to college, whether or not I attend classes, I would sit in the library and I would access these research papers from JSTOR, or from your Taylor and Francis, Elsevier, a lot of these research papers that I would get to read. People young and old, people from across different geographies, how they think on particular issues. So I think that kind of literature review has really helped me in maybe understanding the context of different issues,
Yeah.
and how a society works. Uh, and what I've also realized is that apart from the research output that someone brings in, what is also very important is that that research has access to people. Because I've read some lovely papers on a lot of difficult questions in the society, but I think it's never this never reached the policy boardrooms where decisions are taken or meant. So that kind of an information asymmetry is, I think, one of a very, very fundamental roadblock in the way we function. Because I think it's not that there is unavailability of literature or research on a lot of questions, but I think a lot of these papers just maybe fail to make it to the place that they're supposed to make it to. So that's that. I think that was also a point in time because I had got interested very much in the policy space. So since my third year, I had started preparing for the civil services exam.
Yeah.
And so again, that was a journey where I would again start reading a lot of things and I would read a lot of books. But slowly and steadily, I think as I read more and more, I think I became very disenchanted with the entire ecosystem that we kind of operate in. I think I became because when you read and when you get to understand a lot of truths that, let's say, a teenager would not be able to maybe comprehend or maybe properly process at a particular point in time. I think when you get exposed to a lot of these harsher things that are out there, I think I started getting very disenchanted with the entire process, and then I certainly realized that even if the academics part of the civil services exam is very interesting, which is to say the syllabus in particular, I think when one does enter the service, and I think I'd spoken to a lot of people who are there in the services, it's the scenario entirely changes. I think the kind of ideals with which one prepares for it versus what one really gets to experience when one makes to it, when enters the workforce, I think it's completely falls apart. And I think that kind of jolt up really disenfranchised me from the entire process. But I nevertheless attempted the same this year. So I think there are these two papers, and I did clear the general studies paper. I think barely missed a mark in this aptitude paper as well. But I think one important thing that I realized for myself was that I think I'd always been interested in the academic part of the preparation rather than maybe entering the workforce and then doing those things, because I realized the kind of reconciliability that is there between the ideal and the practical, that kind of disenfranchised me from the process. So after that, because I was also a part of a finance society back in my college, and I was heading it, and I had done a lot of finance internship as well. I had background in research as well. But I think I decided to probably maybe enter back the workforce. So then I joined a mining company, a publicly listed mining company in Mumbai at their head office. And right now, I think it's been a very wonderful experience in the sense that again, just to get back to a conversation when you were saying that what happens is that a lot of times it's the seniors telling you and then the juniors follow up. But I think something very unusual that has happened with me is that juniors do get to uh, put in their thought process, and that thought process is valued. It's not like it's just listened to for the sake of courtesy, or it is listened to just because you want to tell somebody that you want to listen to them. You're giving them space, but I think that is actually incorporated if you could really come up with something insightful and stuff. But I think in that sense, I think I've been lately lucky that I think I got an opportunity to work with people who are there to listen to your voices, and where I can also maybe, without being frustrated, put in whatever I feel about a particular issue or a particular question that is in discussion.
Okay.
So basically, that was about it.
Well, that's very good. It's a very interesting and this is the first time I've heard that I took a subject because I was a rebel. You never heard it. They heard, what the hell? I'm going to rebel. So if they say this is no good, that's why I'm going to do it. Well, congratulations. You did a great job. And I think behind it was a confidence that you will do well no matter what the subject. You had in yourself, it had come up through the fact that, as you said to yourself, you were a geek or whatever. But those are just terms of trying not to boast about yourself, but in the end, in your heart, you look, doesn't matter. I'm going to get ahead. So the subject didn't really matter. So take care. You do commerce. All right, fine. After commerce, I'll do something else. It's fine, right? So this is what you have shown. I think it's a remarkable journey from a first person from Jamshedpur. Let me say, I have had in this thing. I said good. And the I may get more people from Jamshedpur, but I doubt that somebody will say, I rebelled against a teacher whom I had no dealings with and took another course. This is unbelievably daring, let us say. And it has worked for you. SRCC is perhaps, at least in Delhi, the top college for commerce. So it's great to be there and you have got a good job. So I'm very happy to have talked to you. Anything else you want to add here?
No, I was just maybe continuing on the rebellion part. That let's say when I entered college, so it's a very, I think it's a usual practice to sit for placements, and it's a good thing that people want to kind of work. But there is also a group that works because of peer pressure. So they're not really decided what they want to do, but they're also afraid of, let's say, taking a break or taking that space out for themselves. So in that sense, I think I was that one of those few people who did not register for placements in the first place. And a lot of people said that it might be very risky because the way it happens in India versus how it happens in UK. UK, you kind of network, or in the West, you kind of network with people and then you sit for interviews and then you get through. But in India, if you are from a top institute, then that ecosystem is readily built up for you. So these companies come up and they know that because you're from a top college, you have worked hard all your life. So they come and they hire. And maybe off-campus placements are very difficult even for top college students to get a package of their choice. So in that sense, I think I took this another decision that a lot of people said the civil services exam is a gamble. And I said, let it be a gamble, but I think I want to try. And I did put what is known as a stop loss in a stock market terms.
Yes.
So I did prepare for it. I think it did add a lot of value to me. I think I would spend a lot of hours every day just reading a lot of stuff. Let's say from Gayatri Chakravarti's Five Acts to book Can the Subaltern Speak, to James Joyce's portrait of the artist as a young man, to a lot of these philosophies from Hegel to how political theories developed, a lot of these things. So I think my one message towards the end would be that it's fine to take risk in some limited proportion, just to maybe explore different things out, because if we don't take that out, then the way our society and where ecosystems are designed, that will not never allow you to accommodate a lot of your interests in the daily rush of life. So in the daily grind of life, if somebody really wants to do something, then it's all right to maybe take a break and explore and learn, and that adds value, provided we I think make sense of the decision at the right point in time, and then maybe revert back on it if needed. So I think that's one thing that we should never be afraid of, because I spoke to a lot of people who are UPSC aspirants, and what has happened is that they have gotten into a chain. So it's like a first attempt, and then somehow they feel that they have five more attempts, so they will somehow get into it. And what if they don't? And they are a lot of them are also very nervous to maybe just come out of it, because some of them have expressed to me that what will they tell the society, that they took this break, they did not do anything, they just studied, and nothing has really come out of it. So I think to just come out of that grind, to enter it into it once and then just maybe back off, I think is not a it's not a subject of, let's say, cowardice. I think it should be a subject to be celebrated, a subject of intelligence. So I think I had read this quote somewhere that people think that it is intelligent to fight every battle that comes their way, but actually real intelligence lies in the fact that you run away from the battles that are not meant for you. So I think
That's actually, a very important point, to choose your battles. Run
Right.
away, yes, run away means don't fight everything. Accept some loss. As you
Right.
rightly said, put a stop loss.
Hmm.
And say, okay, this one doesn't work. I'm out of here. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you so much, Shanu. Let's end it here. I'm very,
Yes,
very
sir.
happy to have talked to you. Let's end it here. We'll talk a little bit offline. Okay. All right. Thank you.